Hey there, everybody. I'm Jacob Campbell with Leijiverse, and what we are doing today is continuing a series of interviews with people who are heavily involved in the Captain Harlock Leiji Matsumoto fan community to try and get everybody, we're a new English page, and we're trying to introduce everybody to people who have been in the scene for decades, I believe, and really helping to establish a strong fan base with Leiji Matsumoto, and an incredible fan base because I've said this before. I think the Leiji Matsumoto fan base is more heavily involved with the series and with the creator than most animes, to say the least. So I'm here today with Julien Pirou, and he runs triple-9.fr, and I believe he also works with Toki No Wa on their Facebook page. Is that correct?
Yeah, I help. Basically, I have the admin rights to the Toki No Wa page, and I post a few news items and stuff like that. But my main thing is really triple-9, which is a website I started amazingly 16 years ago. In a few days. So yeah, it's hard.
Congrats.
To believe it's been so long.
Yeah. So your website is old enough to drive at this point. Is that what you're saying? Did you get its permit, learner's permit, and you're hitting the road, right?
Yeah, it's been a ride.
Yeah, it's taken you on a ride for sure. So Julien, personally, I mean, you don't have to get too nitty-gritty detail. I've spoken with people who can't reveal themselves because of their job, but in your personal life, what do you do?
So I'm a game designer and a game writer. So I worked in the video game industry for 10 years in Ubisoft.
Okay.
On a game series called Might and Magic.
All right.
I was started as a level designer and then moved to game designer and also joining the writing team. And I spent a long time trying to convince Ubisoft to do a Leijiverse game without success. But,
Oh, that's brutal.
And for 1 year now, I've been, I left Ubisoft to become self-employed. And I'm currently about to publish a pen and paper tabletop role-playing game, going back to the good old mediums. And so that's basically what I do.
So with the game that you're publishing now, is it based in more of a classic fantasy setting, or did any Leiji Matsumoto sci-fantasy get into there? I mean, what's that like?
It's not. There's not a lot of Leiji Matsumoto in it, but it is a science fantasy world. Basically, it has more to do with the Metal Hurlant heavy metal school of comics.
Okay.
Mobius, Kazé, Drouillet, those guys. So it's a alien world, but where a lot of the classic fantasy tropes apply.
Okay. Well, I hope that at some point you are able to perhaps license some Leiji content and put it in there. I mean, that would be fantastic to get more games for Leiji Matsumoto's work published. Yeah. And I'm sure it inspired you to some degree, as it has inspired most sci-fi and sci-fantasy in the last few decades.
My first serious tabletop RPG project as a fan and amateur thing was basically a conversion of a pirate game to the Leiji Matsumoto universe. That was, I think, 12 years or 13 years ago already. But that's an experience that was really nice to do. And I hope someday I would be able to do that officially.
Yeah, that would be incredible. So are you saying that it was based off of the Space Pirate game? Are you talking about the PC 98 game?
It was really a tabletop RPG.
Yes.
There's a French tabletop RPG called Pavillon Noir, so it's Black Flag basically, which was released I think 15 years ago, and I was playing that, and I was thinking, well, I could really convert those rules to play in Matsumoto's world, you know.
Yes.
So that's what I did, and people from the Toki No Wa forums, people with better artistic skills than mine, came and did some fan art that we could use in the PDF and stuff. So it really was a very cool community project in the end.
Yeah.
And basically I was that's something that I would have continued working on, but then I had actual work that took all my time. And then,
you had to stop making games as a hobby and start making games as a career, basically.
That's what happened essentially. So, but,
tough transition.
But if someday there's a project to do an official tabletop or video game of Leiji Matsumoto, I already did a lot of the groundwork back then, so I'm ready.
Yeah.
I'm just waiting for the Arcadia to come and to pick me up.
Yeah, get on like Daiba. So what introduced you personally to the work of Leiji Matsumoto?
So I think my really earliest memory was when I was really very, very small. I came across on TV Galaxy Express 39, the TV series, the anime TV series. And I only saw a couple of episodes of that. I remember that I found it terrifying, to be honest. But a few years later, there was a rerun. So I was older and more into Star Wars and stuff like that. And there was a rerun of the second Harlock series, Mugen Kido SSX. And it was super cool. And I remember thinking, that looks like the same kind of drawings as Galaxy Express that I saw when I was small. And it was, of course. But
are you talking about the movie or the series? Because I can't remember if the series was translated.
Of what? Of Galaxy Express or
Yeah, are you talking, when you say Galaxy Express, are you talking about the movie or the series? The series, yes. Okay, just to be
clear. In France we had like 30 episodes that aired, and then they stopped, I think, because it was just too weird or too dark or something for a kid. Like flash forward like 10 years after my first contact with Galaxy Express, so in 1999, on the New Year's Eve, it was a family New Year's Eve, and I was super bored, and I went to watch TV, and for some reason in the middle of the night they were doing a show called Génération Albator, so Harlock Generation, and it was like for the first time they were airing the final 3 episodes of the first series. And I had never seen the original Captain Harlock at this point, and so I really jumped into the battle between Harlock and the Amazones, and I was like, this looks very old, but it's super cool. I want to know more, and that's really the moment when I started getting interested to beyond just stuff I had seen as a kid here and there, and really trying to know what this universe was. There was Harlock Saga, which was released around this time as well. There was Cosmo Warrior Zero. At this moment, there was the Daft Punk album, which brought Matsumoto back on the screens. And so it was really a sort of ideal moment to dive into the Leijiverse.
Yeah, a lot of content being made and completion, which I've spoken in another interview about how important that was for people who didn't just, catch Galaxy Express, people who actually saw it in 78. So that's really awesome. So that, I'm assuming, leads to the creation of triple-9.fr. So how did that start? At what point in this kind of dive did you decide to make the website?
So it was in 2004, and I was just finishing. I studied applied arts and multimedia, And one of the many things we did learn was how to make a website in Flash back then. Basically it was summer, like end of June, and I wanted to put the skills to make my own website. It was like I want to build something and not just doing exercise for school. I had read a lot of things about Matsumoto's anime. There were many sites who were really focusing on the anime side of the Leijiverse. We just had the first few volumes of Captain Harlock manga being published by Kana in France, and Galaxy Express was starting. And I was really like, there's no website about the manga. So I'll be that website. That was basically the starting point. And I started to go, because in Paris, there's a Japanese neighborhood, basically, near the opera. And there was a huge book of library with a lot of used manga in Japanese. And so I'd go there and try to see if I could spot the Leiji Matsumoto name, the Japanese characters. And I bought tons of manga which I couldn't read, just because I wanted to know his stuff. And so I found stuff like Leonardo da Vinci, one of these most interesting manga of the 90s that has nothing to do at all with Harlock or Galaxy Express, but it's such a trippy, weird time travel story. I found tons of stuff which I couldn't understand, but it started a sort of fascination, because I was like, oh, but this guy has done, like, I don't know, 500 manga or something. And one thing I say usually, now that I still don't read Japanese, that's still my my weakness, but I've read enough to kind of understand what's going on. And for me, Matsumoto is really like a filmmaker, like, I don't know, David Lynch or Cronenberg, in that it's really a body of work when every part enrich the rest. So if you read Harlock, it's great, but if you've also read Galaxy Express 39, it adds a layer to Harlock, and vice versa. And so it's really like the more you dive into Matsumoto's work, the more interesting it becomes, because you realize how deep it is actually, and how, I think, in the way he works, everything is part of this whole I don't know, mind map of his. Yeah, it's great, and I still find stuff that a few months ago I discovered, like he did an adaptation of West Side Story as a manga.
Yes, I did see that on the website, and it looks fantastic.
And I was like, whoa! And I had to go on the Japanese auction sites to try to find the magazine it was in, to scan and so on. So it's really it's like a treasure hunt, so which is I guess on point for a pirate.
Yes, absolutely. Lots of good loot to be had in his extreme profile. I mean, what a prolific artist. And it's also very correct. It is all within the same multiverse. I'm not sure if you've read M1 Razorban or Mi Razorban. I'm not really sure how to say it. I know they just re-released it in Italy, and I was wondering if you had seen that yet.
Yeah, I have an old Japanese edition, and that's one of the. Basically, I have 2 or 3 mangas which I really think it's about time we get them.
Yes,
in French, in English. The Italians are one step ahead of us, but it's basically Queen Millennia, which is a cornerstone of the old Galaxy Express saga, basically, and Mirai Zorban, because Mirai Zorban is really, it's where Matsumoto states how his universe works.
Yes,
that's where he say, okay, so the Toki No Wa, the Ring of Time, it's not just parallel timelines. It's like a wibbly wobbly ball of time stuff, like
yes,
Doctor Who would say. But it's but he visualizes it, and suddenly you see, okay, so that's how it is. And I think the one thing it's a discussion I keep having with people, and I think that the biggest lesson is a bit strong, but a lot of people want to see the works of Matsumoto in a sort of linear timeline, and you have these sort of legends going on, like the SSX series is a prequel to the original Space Pirate Captain Harlock series. And because, in one, Harlock is younger and Toshiro is still alive. But
yes,
no, they're not actually, one is not the prequel to the others. They're like different timelines, different terms of the Ring of Time, basically. Yes. And that's hard to explain to people, because people want to see a sort of logical sequence between these works.
I think in one sense, to say it's a prequel is, I would say, not completely inaccurate, because it is telling an older story, but there are so many sort of story beats that happen in every Leiji Matsumoto universe. And yes, SSX is a prequel in the sense that it is a story block that takes place before what happens in Albator 78 or Space Pirate Captain Harlock, however you like to say it. But you are absolutely correct. It is a different dimension, sort of, or if not a different dimension, a different universe, a parallel universe, and sort of a step ahead on a lot of time travel stories that we have today. I don't think that, as big of a quagmire as time travel is in general when it comes to fantasy storytelling, Leiji Matsumoto, I think, has handled it perfectly, technically perfectly, but in terms of getting people into what the idea is, it's kind of sometimes like getting a square peg in a round hole. It can be difficult for people to understand that difference. And I think, once you understand the difference, it clicks, and then you start seeing all the different variations and parallel universes, and it draws you in more instead of repelling you because of some logic, quote unquote, problem that you have with it. But that's just my little tangent on the issue.
People we are trained, I guess, to look for consistency between the stories, and for me, it's one thing I say sometimes is that it's like American comic books, when you have 1,000 versions of Batman, and it's
right.
You can always recognize it's Batman because the beats, as you said, are here, but it's not necessarily the same direct connected version of Batman. And the only difference is that Matsumoto is doing all these reboots himself.
Yes, but and also getting some strong influence sometimes, at least in terms of the, if not influence, strong inflections from different directors. I think it's really cool to see Rintaro, I believe, directing Albator 78 and then directing Endless Odyssey, and the same mind grown decades older and just being able to adapt it in so many different styles. And it is the eternal Captain Harlock. He can exist in any time and tell a classic story. I think it's kind of a shame we don't get to see those stories come out as much at this point, and it's been a big shame with everything that's happened with Gainax and Zero Century, which I'm sure you may have feelings on yourself.
Yeah. I was really looking forward to it. So,
well, hopefully it will come to fruition at some point, though I know there's been multiple issues with producers perhaps mishandling the IP in terms of live action movies and live action shows and all these things that are being promised and then taken away, unfortunately, for the community. But hopefully through our efforts, we can get the fans together, because they've always had, I think, the biggest impact on Harlock as a series. That's what motivates it to go on, and that does come back to your work with 999, and it sounds like it kind of began a collecting aspect to your life. I mean, do you consider yourself a collector?
I don't know if I would consider myself a collector in the dignified sense. In that, I don't like put my manga in neat little plastic bags and stuff. I like to have stuff to manipulate them and read them,
Yes.
And but I don't put them in a vault somewhere, or so real collectors will probably find me completely crazy, But
yes.
When I see something that I don't know, I mean, I won't buy like 10 different versions of the same manga. If I have already an edition published by, I don't know, Kodansha in the 70s, and there's a new one coming, I won't like buy it a second time. But if I see something like, oh, I don't know this one, then I will try to acquire it to know what it is, what it's about.
Yeah, and I share the sentiment of wanting to use the things that you buy and enjoy them. And, there are collectors, they want everything shrink wrapped and they want 13 different variations of it. And, sometimes people have it a little bit lighter. They like to get good use out of it. I like to read my classic Harlocks that I just got. Those are my first two, but you've got quite a bigger stack behind you. Mine's got a Yu-Gi-Oh card in it where I'm stopped right now, but you have quite a few books behind you. You were showing me earlier. Maybe we can take a look at that at some point here. It got you into looking into it. You found obscure things, and that's so critical, and showing those obscure things and documenting them. I think where this has gone in past interviews, I ask if you're a collector, say no, and what I actually think. Okay, excellent, thank you. And what I actually think with people in the community who take your position, you're more of a historian. Amateur perhaps, but historian nonetheless, and you're preserving this crucial information. Do you see yourself more of the historian side of things?
I don't know. I try not to, put too much of a label on it.
Sure.
I think of myself as someone who really loves this and wants to share it. But I know that if I wanted to be a real historian or then I would definitely need to learn to read the Japanese and go to first-hand sources, because right now a lot of what I know from other people.
Sure.
Reading about it and sharing about it. So I'm more, I guess, a gatherer of information.
Well, that takes that's a huge part of the documentation of history. So I thank you for it, regardless, however you consider your participation. Let's talk about how you became involved with Toki No Wa and Webring Leiji. I'm assuming you had the website before then. And what were the events that led you to getting more involved with their efforts?
Well, by then, when I started 999, there was two websites that were very, very big. Arcadia 2000, which was a website by a guy named Bis, which was a very beautiful website by the standards of 2004, but it was decorated like you were on the bridge of the ship and so on. And it had a lot of information about the old manga, about the that's where I first learned about Diver Zero, or this sort of proto version of Harlock. So that was really for me, that was like the best website ever. And there was another one which was Albator SSX, which was more focused on the Captain Harlock anime, and they had a forum where people could exchange. And I was I had an account on the forum, and I was not very active. And so when I started 999, I went to say, hey, I started my own website. I was scrappy and so on. 2-3 days later, I got an email from Watcha, from Toki No Wa, basically saying, okay, we saw that you created a website, and actually we are a Webring. And so do you want to be part of the Webring Leiji Francophone, the French-speaking Leiji Matsumoto Webring? And I say, yeah, sure. And actually, it's rather amazing when I think about it, because like a few days later, they were offering to meet in a restaurant in Paris and talk, and that was the beginning of a friendship that still continues today. So it's the power of when a fan base is a positive and really enriching thing. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's been my experience with Watcha and the majority of people involved with Leiji Matsumoto's work and the fandom that goes into it. So you got approached, you had your website, and you had a friendly interaction with Watcha, which I'm familiar with. I'm sure you got a lot of information and learned a lot. So where do things go from there for you guys? And there are conventions that are happening in the future, and I'm assuming you were participating in that. What was your experience with the Webring in general? Bring me up to speed, what you guys have been doing together.
Well, at that time, it was really a sort of right after the release of Cosmo Warrior Zero, Gun Frontier, and Submarine Super 99 TV series.
Yes.
So at the time, there was this sort of revival with a few series coming out, and so conventions. As you mentioned, there was a convention, the first one I ever went to, which was called Game in Paris. Very nice. There was only 2 or 3 editions, sadly. And we went there, and Toki No Wa had this very, very small booth with a very small box with some goodies in it. And on the second edition, that I came with my homebrew tabletop RPG to run games and so on. So that was a lot of fun. And I think the thing that really took it to the next step was there was a DVD publisher called Déclic Image, which doesn't exist anymore, but they acquired the rights to the first Galaxy Express 39 movie to release it in a collector's DVD. We were talking about what the Toki No Wa could do to help, because before I joined Watcha and Ido and all the guys, had done some text for booklets and some video for Gun Frontier, for Cosmo Warrior. And for Galaxy Express 39, they said, they told me, why don't you be in that? We're shooting some videos with experts talking about like the themes of Galaxy Express 39. And so I was with Ido, actually, and Celeban, who was from the Albator SSX forum. And now he does the Leiji News account. And we were in that, all the 3 of us, talking, being very serious and talking about the the Holy Grail theme in Galaxy Express and so on. And when I see it again, I think, okay, I'm 17 or 18 years old in that. I still have acne, and I'm like talking like I'm a scholar of Leiji Matsumoto. So yeah, that's
so you're not a collector, you're not a historian, you're an expert. Just so we have it on, we have it on camera now, and everybody knows that's what you call yourself. You're a Leiji Matsumoto expert. Got it.
That's what the DVD of Galaxy Express 39 called my 18 years old self. Yeah.
Well, that's I mean,
but it was an amazing experience, and when I watch it, I say, okay, I don't say too many crazy stuff. I'm mostly it's okay. But after that, I actually went to, because as I mentioned, I did applied arts in school, and I went to work for a DVD publisher called Kazé to do DVD packaging and menus and stuff like that. I spent 5 years working at Kazé on many anime releases. I think I did almost three versions of Am I Goddess. In the end, I just couldn't do it anymore. And while I was at Kazé, I was very, very lucky to work on the French version of Space Symphony Maetel and do the box and the booklets and all that. So, I mean, as a fan, being able to work on that was really a great honor. For me, meeting the people in Toki No Wa and Watcha and CPZ and a lot of people who kind of disappeared as it happened on the internet, that they stop, frequenting the forum so often, and little by little they drift away, and you never really know what happened to them. But the meeting these people in many ways was a sort of start for me as a professional. I mean, I wonder where my life would be if I not joined Toki No Wa at that moment. And I know that I made it happen in a way because I did 999. I created the website, and that was a sort of entry point. But there are some meetings. You meet some people at some point in your life, and it's only way later you think back and you realize how much they changed your life, basically. And so that's how I feel about Toki No Wa folk.
Yeah, and maybe you met them in a past life too, and it was all the same thing, basically, just with World War II planes or the Wild West. Maybe that happened.
Yeah. But just to say, I understand when Matsumoto goes on, and sometimes he raves a bit about fate and meeting people and stuff like that, and I get it. Maybe not as lyrically as he does, but
not as romantic.
I know where he's coming from with that.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a very strong sense of romance and a very strong sense of science. And I think those things come together in a very unique way in his work, and it has that impact on people. You start thinking about fate. And I feel my page, starting my little Facebook page probably took a fraction of the work that it took to start F9 or 999FR. But I feel similarly. I feel that, just kind of sucks you in. All you had to do was kind of like shoot your flag or something. But so this led to direct employment with Kazé, yes?
Basically, it was my training period at the end of my school years.
Okay, like an internship?
Yeah, internship, exactly.
Okay.
So for 6 weeks, and at the end of the 6 weeks, they say, we want to keep you. So I said, yeah, cool. And,
yes.
And I stayed there for 5 years. So,
yeah.
And I started as a graphic designer, and at the end, I was the art director of the company.
So you did work on Space Symphony Maetel and the packaging for that. Did you do any of the packaging for Gun Frontier, or no? Did that already happen?
No, that was before my time.
Okay, because I was going to say, I mean, the graphical styling that you guys used between Gun Frontier and Space Symphony Maetel and what was the other big one I want to know? Either way, all have a very distinct style with sort of these kind of flat images that are very affected and given sort of these motion graphic sort of blurs and stuff. So somebody, I'm assuming maybe there was an art director you worked with who had done a lot of that stuff. Was that how it went?
When I joined Kazé, the art director was David Mourier, who is now a very successful comic book artist and writer. And still someone, he basically lives like 2 streets from
oh, wow.
my apartment, so we see each other a lot, even now. But on Space Symphony Maetel, basically, what he said was, okay, so it's going to be the same kind of box that we had on Gun Frontier and Submarine Super 99 and trademark Matsumoto release. All the Matsumoto series are in the same kind of format, same kind of packaging. So we're doing something like that, and you're the fan, and now have fun. So that was basically it.
Okay.
So on Space Symphony Maetel, there was no real strong direction. In a lot of the time, people don't necessarily realize, but the Japanese right holders, they send you some pictures, some what we call the key arts for the series, and if you're lucky, it's a PSD file with layers. If not, you have to be creative. and from that, you have to say, okay, so I have those visuals. I need to make a box. What would I want to see? On Space Symphony Maetel, I did 2 versions of the box because there was a red box, which was the original like super collector version. And a few years later, there was a cheaper slipcase box, and we had to make it different. So the slipcase version is closer to the Japanese release. It has this sort of blue sky theme. Personally, I think it's really a nice duo of releases because you have this red inspired by Metal's coat release and the blue one, which they complement each other visually very nicely. So it's
very French.
Yeah, it lacks the white version between the two, but the to be able to work like this and really try to harmonize your releases and so on, you cannot do that all the time. Sometimes the Japanese are really like, it needs to be like this and that's it. But when they let you do your thing, you can really have some fun and usually the result you can see that it's the graphic designer had fun.
Yeah, and so that may harken back to a point that I try to harp on a lot, which is the publishers or whoever was working with you on behalf of work of Leiji Matsumoto. It sounds like there was an impetus to let your creativity shine. I mean, let French people decide what the French release of Captain Harlock means and give a person who is quite literally a fan of the work the keys to the car and not tell them, oh, you need to go this way or that way.
Yeah, the people in Kazé were really very open to suggestions. One thing they told me later is that they were a bit scared. I mean, the higher ups in the company, because I was a fan, because they had some experience with interns who were fans in the past and were very, very stubborn. Like, no, the only way to respect the work is to do that way, and I will not change anything, And so they were a bit like, is he going to be like this kind of guy? But one of my qualities that I really don't. If you tell me we have good reasons to do differently, I will say, sure, okay, I understand. So yeah, I'm not like I will die on that hill. so they were reassured in the end. Say, okay. So,
I mean, did they have major edit suggestions for you that maybe if you had a bit more pride, you think would have irked you?
No, because right from the start, there was a discussion. And I think that's what's always most important is to start discussing with the director of manufacturing, the director of marketing, and so on, and say, okay, what are you expecting from this project? And then you take all that into account and say, okay, and as a fan, that's what I want to see, and how can I make all those things come together? I always feel that it's more interesting to work trying to juggle with these constraints. If you just go and say, and I will do it my way and not listen to anybody, it's not very challenging. And it's in the end, you have the risk that you come up with something and people say, oh, no, it won't work. And then you're hurt. And
yes.
So.
I worked as a professional graphic designer for over a decade, so I can empathize with needing to get everybody on the same page when we are designing something that doesn't just have to please you, obviously, or your boss or the publisher. It needs to take the fans into consideration more than likely the most. And it's funny, as a designer, after time, you generally start to understand that it's the user that matters the most in this whole thing. And sometimes you have to cut down your boss or your publisher's ego to get that out of the way so you can get the fans what they need too. And it is a delicate balance, and it can be stressful to be in that environment. So it's good to hear that at least working on Space Symphony Maetel, you didn't find yourself in that sort of tough spot. Now, Oh My Goddess, I don't know how that worked out for you. It seems to be more of a negative experience after the third time.
I mean, Oh My Goddess, it was more the repetition because it was super popular product. So when you work on it the first time, you're like, great. And then 2 years later, they come back and say, so we make a new edition of the same series. And like, okay, so I need to find something different. And then 2 years later, they come back again and say, so you need to do another packaging when you are still the same visuals, there's nothing new to work with. And you're like, what am I going to do this time? At some point,
yeah.
There's only so much same visuals. It was very self-contained. It was 13 episodes, so you could really release it as a one box, and it was done. And where Oh My Goddess, it was like this big box, like part 1, part 2, part 3. So I tend to prefer now this sort of short series that don't meander into filler episodes and so on. I say that, and the last thing I watch is basically the whole JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. So I don't know. but I like this sort of mini series kind of format, and I think it works well for Matsumoto because usually it's when they have to make something very, very long and fill up. That's where it's stray away from the beginnings.
Yeah, and that's another good part of Leiji Matsumoto's universe too, is that there's not enough. The story seems eternal, but it's very compact, and it fits into pretty much any sort of box you want to put it into. But you generally need to put it in a box with a definitive beginning and end. And like you said about design work, it's good to have those restraints. Restraints can keep you from flying off the handle, jumping the shark. So it's good to see that you rarely see, if ever, in a Leiji Matsumoto film or work, some random I'm the new mainstay character, and I'm like the blonde little cousin or something. That just never happens. It's never like a Brady Bunch situation. So that's a good thing, I think.
I think the Queen Millennia TV series, which I really enjoyed, but you can feel that they started it when Matsumoto was only in the beginning of the manga, and so basically reaching the end of the, I think it's 39 episodes, Queen Millennia, and you're like, oh, it was 39 episodes to do basically the first volume of the manga, and and coming with a sort of an unsatisfying ending, and it's very sad because the manga is amazing in terms of creativity and ideas, and you can really feel that Matsumoto is at the peak of his effervescence or something, and it's very sad that the TV series had to make do with only the very early beginning of that awesome story.
Yeah, and that's something that I, as an English speaker who I'm a make a confession. I prefer dubs. I love dubs, and I have a harder time getting into something when it's not in my language. I got through SSX. I was blown away, but the disconnection was there the whole time, and it really slowed down my ability to watch the dang thing. So sort of a tangent there, but it's very hard to access his work in general. So again, thank you for everything you've done to ensure as many people can enjoy it as possible. I want to go to my next question here, and from what I understand, you have met Leiji Matsumoto, and what I wanted to ask you was, how did that meeting come about? You know, you're working on 999, you're working with the Webring, things go from one place to another, and how did that come about?
With the Webring and Toki No Wa, we were very lucky, and again, it's thanks to Watcha and company. They got in touch with Leiji Matsumoto's exhibitor, or the gallery owner who exhibits Matsumoto's work. So Mr.
In
Fukuoka.
Japan?
Yeah, Mr.
Okay.
Fukuoka. And he like once per year, he comes to Paris to do a sale of originals, not only Matsumoto, but also Ghibli and other artists like that. And one year he's in Paris, and Watcha suggest we invite him to a restaurant. So we did. We brought him to a very nice Italian restaurant, and actually it's a funny thing because we told him through his translator that it would be like on Saturday night. On Saturday morning, we see that he contacted us and saying, "But I was in the restaurant yesterday and nobody was there." He came on Friday night, and he really enjoyed the restaurant. So he came back on Saturday night again when he realized that he had actually there was a mix-up in the date. Oh, so we go to the restaurant with Mr. Fukuoka, and I find myself sitting next to him and talking about him a lot through his translator. And at the end of the dinner, we're leaving, we're paying and so on. And he basically tells me something in Japanese, and the translator gives me a big smile and he's saying that if you come to Japan, send him a message and he will make you meet Mr. Matsumoto. And I'm like, okay, like that will ever happen, but some things you remember very well. Yes. And like 2 years later, I was on my honeymoon, and my wife and I were going to Japan for the honeymoon. And I say, you know what? I will actually send a message on Facebook to Mr. Fukuoka and say, hey, I don't know if you remember me. We'll be in Japan. So, if there's any chance to meet Mr. Matsumoto, it would be a great honor. And I basically don't hear from him like for a week. Next week, the week after that, we are in Japan. We are like preparing our schedule, and suddenly I receive a message from Mr. Fukuoka saying like, come to my gallery tonight at this hour, and I will take you to Mr. Matsumoto. And we're like, whoa. and so that's how it happened. We went to the gallery, and he had some work to finish, so he told us, okay, wait here. You can see here I have some originals from Tezuka, and we were like, and he had some originals from Matsumoto as well, and it was crazy. And then very late, like 9 or 10 p.m., he said, okay, now we go. So he took us in his car, and his car actually has a plate 999.
Right.
Very nice. And so he took us in the suburbs of Tokyo, and we ended up at Leiji Matsumoto's place. And it was completely surreal, and yeah, amazing. It was an amazing evening because we were very, very blessed because there was Matsumoto Sensei, of course, but there was also his wife, Maki Sensei, who was there and who stayed with us. And later, Mr. Fukuoka told us that actually never happens. Usually, Mrs. Maki leaves Leiji do his thing and doesn't stay, but she decided to stay with us, and and so yeah, it was a very, very amazing time. And when Mr. Fukuoka dropped us at our hotel later, we were like, what just happened? It was like, whoa, we stepped into the Twilight Zone or something. But it's amazing.
You stepped into the Leijiverse is what happened.
Exactly. And it's very funny because when you see Matsumoto on stage or when he comes doing conference, in France anyway, he always tells the story of how they let him pilot the Concorde.
Yes.
So that's his big story. And every time he tells it, it becomes bigger and bigger.
Yes, the fish expands.
And when we went at his home, he started telling the story. And then his wife basically gave him a kick with the elbow and saying,
"Shut up about the planes."
No. It was more like stop telling this fairy tale. It never happened. And so every time Matsumoto comes and starts doing the Concorde story, I'm like, yeah, I know the truth. But he's a storyteller. It's part of the character.
Yes, he wants to tell it in his way, and it's special. It's probably better that way. Yeah. So when you were at his abode, what stuck out to you? I mean, you're saying it's like going into the Leijiverse, and that makes total sense. What were some things that stuck out for you?
Well, two things that, and every time I talk about it with my wife, is something that we always mention, is that their kindness, really the kindness of Matsumoto and Maki Sensei. They were really, really nice, they made time for a couple of French guys coming out of nowhere. So and they talked, and my wife learns Japanese, so she can at least talk a bit. I don't, but she talked with Mrs. Maki a lot, and so there was a real interaction. It was not just like a star, out of reach. Right. And what was funny is that Matsumoto had some pages from the latest Captain Harlock manga, Dimension Voyage, the one that's being drawn. It's finished now, but that was being drawn by Koichi Shimaboshi, and he was like, he was there reviewing the pages, and he started saying like, yeah, that's the latest pages I received. I'm asking for this change and this change and stuff. And it was very open about it, like, hey, since you're here, come and see this, Yeah. So that was very sweet. And no, it was a really great encounter. And I have the photos, the pictures to prove that it happened. I'm still not completely convinced myself that it did,
Yeah, you were hallucinating, but it sounds like a good hallucination nonetheless. So,
but for me, it was really the highlight of the honeymoon.
Yes, you met Senpai and he noticed you, and that's always a good feeling. So you met Matsumoto through doing the Webring and doing your work with 999, and you got this amazing one-on-one experience. But beyond the one-on-one experience, he's been around you in conventions, in large groups, and huge amounts of French Leiji Matsumoto fandom getting to experience him in real life. And those conventions in general just seem like really important meeting grounds and places for great bonding. I mean, how have conventions defined the growth of 999 and yourself?
I think for me the biggest change that happened was basically coming from behind the curtain to being in front of the curtain. I mean, when Matsumoto came to Angoulême a few years ago, it was before the release of the CGI movie, and it was amazing. For me, it was the first time I was seeing him for real. And I was just a guy in the audience. I got to ask one question, and it was my moment. freezing in face of the spotlight or something, because I was like, I have a question at the end, and
Mr. Matsumoto.
And suddenly I found myself with a microphone in the end, and Leiji Matsumoto watching like straight at me and asking, okay, so what do you want to know? And I'm like, and I could not for the life of me remember what I was asking, what I wanted to ask about. I was really like blank. My brain froze. And my wife says it was like the cutest thing ever, but for me it was super embarrassing. And and last year in Japan Expo, I was actually doing the MC for Matsumoto on stage.
Big growth. Yeah.
So suddenly it was like, whoa, what am I doing here? And again, something that if I stop and think about it, I wonder if it's real.
I mean, it sounds like you found a bit of the confidence of Harlock in yourself there throughout, those years. I don't know how big of a gap that was between those two experiences.
It was 6 years.
Okay. So, yeah, I'm sure a lot of growth and cool stuff happened. And what about for 999, your website? I mean, have you ever set up a booth at the convention? I mean, it sounds like you have a very not just a participatory role in it, but an administrative role. A larger role. I mean, what has that done for your website, and how people reacted to that?
With 999, I never had a booth just for 999. When 999 is present, it's always as part of the Toki No Wa booth.
Okay.
Part of the reason for that is that, especially after I started working in the video game industry, I could never find the time to to really get involved in the organization. I don't know how Watcha does it. Honestly, it's so much work.
He's got lots of energy for it. That's for sure. It's passion.
Yeah, and so basically every time they say, "Hey, we're having a Toki No Wa booth. Do you want to come?" I say, "Yeah, sure." But I never had really the time to get involved in the organization. I bring some rare pieces when I can and stuff like that. But I'm more as a tourist in a way.
Well, how have people come to you? I mean, I'm sure somebody has shown you appreciation in the fandom and approached you about your website. I mean, what kind of response do you get about 999 at conventions? What does it mean to the fandom?
I don't see actually a lot of it's hard to explain, but the fans we see in conventions are usually fans that we know for a long time now, because we see them year after year after year. So I don't really have an experience of someone new coming to me and saying, your website. It's more like, I really enjoy the latest article you put on 999, which is always nice.
And you're usually hearing it from an old friend, I guess, is at that point.
And usually what works in conventions, and that's where Watcha and company are very, very good, is that what attracts people, it's not really the websites themselves. That's a sort of a afterthought. They come because of the giant Arcadia on the booth. They come because they see someone dressed as Harlock or Captain Okita or Emeraldas.
Do you do any cosplay?
And that's no, I don't.
Okay, you don't dress up.
I could maybe do Toshiro, but
yeah, I feel like a mix between Totoro and Harlock myself.
You certainly have Harlock hair.
I feel like a Totoro in appearance, with minus the glasses and height. But sometimes I wish I was just small and coated and got a big hat on, But yeah, I mean, Totoro is a way to go low key cosplay. For anybody that's shy, it's a good idea.
Poncho, a cowboy hat.
Yes.
And
yes. Take a gun to it out back and easy. But
I don't. I never feel comfortable in disguises and stuff. So I come as myself.
Yes. Again, we're talking about the fans here and how critical fans are to Leiji Matsumoto's work. Getting it outside of Japan, it's really seems to be so fan motivated and it's integral. I mean, I don't see this happening with other animes. I've said it in another interview. You know, if fans worked on Dragon Ball Z projects like they work on Leiji Matsumoto projects, you wouldn't have a bunch of worthless DVD editions of Dragon Ball Z, because they, you know, that's a huge struggle in the fandom. Which set do I even get? How do I watch it in a decent quality? And I just don't see those problems happening for Leiji Matsumoto's works past, post Harmony Gold, basically, you know, who kind of cursed us with the problem of not being able to get it in a high quality when it was originally published. And nowadays things seem to come out and people say that looks good. That's a faithful representation of what Albator 78 looked like. I mean, what's your take on this? How do you see how fans interact with the Leijiverse and those products versus any other anime? And you do have some insider information there potentially.
I think the big difference is that Leiji Matsumoto is part of this sort of, I don't find the word, pantheon of the sort of original masters of manga.
Yes.
So when a publisher releases even a series that's a bit low budget, like Gun Frontier was, or Submarine Super 99, they won't say, okay, we need to put some collector vibe in it. Whereas Dragon Ball is much more popular for sure in terms of sales and so on. I mean, Dragon Ball, it's been insane since day one, you know.
And in theory, though, you'd think they have a larger fan base, a more, you know, they'd be easier to find people, especially in 2020, to point out and say, you know what you're talking about. You're in connection with the fans. Help us make this great. And I see that happening with Leijiverse stuff and not with other fandoms, I guess. But so I don't mean to interrupt too much, but I'm not sure if size of the series has much to do with it, or maybe it, I mean, what's your take there? Yeah, please expand on what you were saying.
What I mean is that because Dragon Ball is such a juggernaut, the fan base is, I mean, now it's all ages, but it's still at art for a younger audience. So they want, I think, boxes that are not too expensive, and they don't really care about if the box is beautiful or not. They just want it on the shelf to watch it soon. But
it's beyond the quality issues go beyond the box. I mean, that's your direct contribution, obviously, and that's your point of view for the stuff you worked on. But the problem becomes the representation isn't faithful. The remastering is hacky. I mean, and you're saying, yeah, they want to make it cheaper, but then they do all these extra things that ruin it. And I don't see that happening with Leijiverse stuff. I mean, maybe it is because it's smaller, but I don't know. I'm still confused, I guess. I'm trying to get to the root of this issue. Why are these Leijiverse things preserved better almost, it seems?
I think it's part of it is that it's a lot of smaller bricks. Dragon Ball is, if you take the manga, it's like 42 volumes. I think the longest Matsumoto ever did was Galaxy Express, and it's 21, like half the length of Dragon Ball. It feels longer, but it's a different format. Matsumoto is much more into doing shorter works and another and experimenting in some other direction. even I was talking about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure earlier, but it's like, I mean, the artists of JoJo found ways to renew the series by having these parts with different atmospheres and so on. But it's really like this very long body of work with basically the same series. Matsumoto would never do that. Matsumoto would get bored, and so if he does 5 volumes of something, that's already nice.
Yeah.
So I think it contributes to having smaller objects that you want to make nicely, because it's much more easy. It's much easier to make that into a collector item, and the fans, I think, also of Matsumoto are now the ones who grew up watching Albator 78 and so on, are now sometimes the founders of the publishing companies. So they want to do it well, and that's also, I think, contributes a lot, because even if it's not the thing that sells the most, it's important for people who knew it back then, and if they do it, they want to do it right. And you see that a lot. I mean, when Kana started publishing the manga Captain Harlock, it really started because the boss of Kana watched Albator on TV when he was a kid, and he said, why don't we have the manga in French? It's like the missing link. We need to publish it. It needs to be us. So that's, you have the spirit, and then the market realities come in. I had some opportunities to talk with people from Kana about that. They published all of Galaxy Express 39 in French, but it was, in terms of sales, they did it for the art, really. But I think for people of that generation, people who discovered anime and manga, I won't say at the beginning, because it's actually older than most people think, but in the late 70s, in the 80s, with stuff like Go Nagai, Leiji Matsumoto, Cobra, this series, when they have the opportunity to publish something in one of these universes, they really want to offer something nice, because that's important to them as well. It's not just a product. There's always a phenomenon of, at some point, you stop caring as much about the new stuff. And I felt it. Everyone feels it about something at some point. When you used to love anime, maybe, and in 2020, and some new series comes out that everyone is super excited about, and you're like, oh,
I don't want to watch Sword Art Online. No, thank you. That's my sentiment,
Yeah, but then if you are the head of a publishing company, you know that you have to release it because the audience wants it.
Yeah, you're definitely providing a service there, and it does make sense. That's probably another big part of the puzzle, is that it's when it's being done, when it's being released by fans, even if they're the boss at Kana or Kazé, and that has a huge part of it. And something else came to mind, talking about the size and popularity of something like Dragon Ball Z. In contrast, they often fall victim to the Star Wars re-release, right? I mean, with George Lucas totally, messing up his past work. And maybe you're not seeing that one-to-one with Dragon Ball, but I think the impetus to, we have to make this more palatable for the new kids. We have to, change this coloring and refine this line art somehow. And then they just end up butchering it because they don't they see, oh, well, we'll allocate this amount of budget for it. And it's a very corporate decision. And by the time they get it, it's too late to do anything about it. And whoever approved it weeks and weeks ago. Who greenlight this? Basically sort of things like that. So perhaps we're lucky that it's more niche to be involved with this Leijiverse thing, because we are getting much more pure stuff, even if we do kind of resent that it's not being refined for our taste, even within translation. I don't want to have to learn Japanese to get into every single little bit. And you kind of echoed that lament of, when am I going to get the Rosetta Stone for Japanese and just do it? I feel like I have to as a Leijiverse fan, and that's a tough thing. But at the same time, like we're saying here, it ensures that what is provided to us is of quality, at least in modern history. And we did learn from the Harmony Golds of yesteryear.
Yeah, so I don't know how it is in the US, to be honest, but in French, there have been some series that historically have been butchered by the TV channels or the distributors or anything. Hokuto no Ken is one of the most famous examples. They wanted to air Hokuto no Ken on TV, and then after buying it and starting to air it, actually this is very violent. and so the famous story, but the actors doing the voices in French for Hokuto no Ken were given total freedom to dub the series as they wanted.
Mais si jamais tu essaies de bouger, tu exploseras tout simplement. Boum, boum, boum. Non. Si. Décidément, les temps comme les œufs sont durs.
So they were making stuff up, doing jokes, adding puns everywhere. And I mean, it's hilarious. Honestly, it's super funny, but it has zero respect for the work.
Yeah, the source material's totally lost. Did you say Otoko Oiden?
No, Hokuto no Ken.
Okay, I'm
Feast of the North Star.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about. Okay, so yes, I'm on board now. Everybody who's watching probably already knew what the heck you were talking about, but yeah, I apologize, but yes, it's tough, and I haven't even touched any of the Harmony Gold stuff or Captain Harlock and Queen Melania yet, just because
the mashup, right?
I don't want that to be my first experience with it, and that's why I hold out hope that some of this other stuff gets dubbed in English. I mean, I still think there's an opportunity to dub 78 in English. I think it can 110% be done. It's just a matter of getting rights from X, Y, and Z and getting it all together and meeting people. And I'm sort of brainstorming my own things that I want to do, because I've worked in publishing, creative publishing for years as well, and I have this desire to make it happen, and that's why it's so cool to get to talk to people like you. And if there's anybody else watching here who has experience in these types of things, or has also worked on maybe something Leijiverse related, please get involved. Please join the conversation and speak on. If you're French, go to Toki No Wa. If you're English, maybe hop over to Leijiverse Facebook page. And this Triple Nine doesn't have a forum though, right? That's through. No. I'm sure you link to Toki No Wa.
Old school website.
Yes. So everybody knows where to go. Sorry,
I do have a Facebook page.
Oh, okay. I will make sure that I link everything up. You'll be able to find out where all these links are, where all these things are. And hopefully after the interview, we can go back through this and talk about, what you can share to help visualize the whole story for everybody, and everybody can get those resources. I just wanted to ask you one more question. How has the work of Leiji Matsumoto impacted your life, made a change in your life? I know we were talking about you at conventions and going from not being able to get a word out in front of Leiji Matsumoto to actually presenting an event with him. So obviously there was an impact on your life overall. How would you describe it?
it will be super corny, but it really felt like joining a crew or to sail on the sea of stars. But it's in a very special way the opportunity, and I don't think I'm very grateful that this opportunity happened to take something that I loved as a fan, not only being able to do a reasonably successful website about it, but also meet like-minded people who love the same thing and who are really in this spirit of not like gatekeeping, but opening the gates as much as possible and bringing people. And one thing that Watcha has been doing relentlessly, is never really bringing the spotlight to Toki No Wa itself, but trying to push forward the websites, the webmasters. When there was a project, there are a lot of projects where he could just have done it himself. But every time he would call myself or Ido or someone else, Ezis, a lot of people with great websites, some of them like 20 years old now, and say, hey, can I ask us to help on this project? Do you want to do it? And really, he brought the spotlight on every one of us. That's thanks to that I got to meet the people of Kazé, and then later get my internship in that company and work there for 5 years. And what it taught me basically is that you should never be afraid of trying to make something happen. And in a way that has really become a sort of my life philosophy, because I started making maps for video games like on my free time and putting that on the internet, and that got me hired by Ubisoft later. It was really a matter, I think, of seeing that, and I think Matsumoto would agree with that statement when his motto is like time never betrays your dreams, and he repeats that every time, every opportunity he has, and that's very true. I mean, if you love something and you try to make something out of it and give it time, and you will get somewhere. And that's, I think, what Toki No Wa taught me and helped me realize and in a very profound way is that if you're willing, when there's a will, there's a way. As they say. If you should never be afraid. If you love something, if it's Matsumoto or Dragon Ball or anything, but if you love it and you think you have something to say about it, you should never be afraid to put it there. People will find you, and that's how your life changes. It's not by gatekeeping. Never gets you anywhere because the gates are closed. You need to open them.
Absolutely.
That sounds very wiser than I usually am.
You're channeling the sensei right now.
Yeah. And on the Concorde, sorry.
No, that's awesome. And that echoes sentiments that I've been told by other people while I've been doing these interviews. I mean, I've heard about Watcha putting people in the spotlight, and he spoke with me personally about how he works more from the shadows, and I'm sort of shedding a light on Watcha. Big shout outs for all the connection and work that he's done behind the scenes to ultimately help orchestrate awesome meetings and giving people the confidence to go forward and do the things that they want to do, in particular in the Leijiverse and that fandom right here. But obviously, for you and your career, it made a huge impact. And so, shout outs not just to Leiji Matsumoto, but to Watcha and the entire community for connecting. And it, everybody seems willing to lift one another up. And in turn, hopefully we show respect and help document the importance of somebody like Leiji Matsumoto as one of the, if not the oldest living link to the origins of manga and anime. So thank him, thank Watcha, thank you, Julien, for joining me. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Any closing words that you'd like to say about Leiji Matsumoto in general, your work?
I think everything has been said. I still have hope that more manga will be translated eventually. Again and again, I talk to publisher and they say, yeah, we really want to, but the time is not right.
Yeah.
But, I mean, if there's a will, there's a way again. So it will happen eventually.
One way or another.
One thing that would speed up things, because that's what happened in the early 2000s, is that you had these anime series, talked about them, again, Frontier and so on, Galaxy Railways, which was a very, very nice series, that became the locomotive, the head wagon of this train. And because there was this movement, publishers say, yeah, let's release something, let's release a manga, translate stuff. Right now, the last big release was a CGI movie. And in French, you had Queen Emeralda's omnibus edition, for which I wrote the preface. There was Stories of a Distant Time. There was World of Four Dimensions that were translated, which was amazing. But then, since then, it's 7 years already. There's no new TV series, no new movie, sadly. I think we were all hoping for the Zero Century thing, but...
Still hope.
Yeah, so I think if there is a new series coming, it will become again a flagship for people, for new releases to come out. So I hope that there were some rumors at some point that Dimension Voyage would be adapted into an anime series or a movie. It was a bit of contradictory information. Sadly, nothing came out of it yet. So that would have been nice.
Well, in this world of, the publishers, people have rights to things, and they are the last gatekeepers. I mean, you're talking about gatekeeping. They have the keys. They have the ability to make things go because they have to control the gate. But we live in such a world now in 2020 where making content, a kid, scanlations have been around, of course, for a long, long time, but the fans have made things before and again, translations that are perfect. Earthbound comes to mind, the Mother series in Japan, how, the fans take it into their own hands and do what needs to be done. And even if, the publisher doesn't give it its purest blessing directly, sometimes they still respect it, like Nintendo respecting the Mother translations and things like that. So one way or another, these things will get done, and it just takes fan movement and people like us to get things started, and people like you at home to help us move things along. So again, you can get in contact with either of us, either Leijiverse on Facebook, or 999 has a Facebook as well, or through Webring Leiji, Toki No Wa. If you speak French, get on those forums. It seems like a fantastic place to be. So
we have a few English speaking users, actually.
Okay,
not a
excellent.
lot, but there's 2 or 3 people that post in English.
Well, maybe that's something we can even, move forward with in the future. That's maybe even a conversation you and I and Watcha could have. And if fans are interested in getting involved with what I recognize as one of the largest Leijiverse communities online, Toki No Wa is a great place to do that. So we'll continue that conversation. We're going to continue our work. Thank you so much for your speaking with me and your work again, Julien. And I'm just going to wrap it up here. Here's how I've been wrapping it up. Now, the first time I did this, Watcha refused. He straight up just said, I'm not doing that. And then I got him again sitting with Satch and his wife, their respective wives, Claire, and we called her sitting on that to keep names down, but I asked for a Harlock salute, and I'm wondering if you'll give me one.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to all of you soon. Have a good one.